Story 1. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also, there is hair everywhere, especially in the bathroom. Story 2. It is less about grand romance and more about choosing patience and teamwork every single day. Story 3. There will be long stints where nothing interesting happens. You still have to be a normal human. Story 4. A selfish partner makes your life infinitely worse than being single, but a loving one makes it infinitely better. Story 5. Being married to an incredible husband and father means I am utterly terrified of anything happening to him. I honestly do not know what I would do. Story 6. How much of it is just teamwork in the boring moments? Dishes, bills, routines. Love helps, but patience keeps it going. Story 7. In-laws can be destructive to your marriage even when they are 3,000 miles away. Story 8. Having a baby can make or break your relationship in the first few months. Feeling anxious, sleep-deprived, and physically changed can be overwhelming. If you do not choose an unselfish partner, you might as well be a single parent. Story 9. I never had good role models for marriage, so I had no idea what it would be like long-term. After 25 years together, including 24 years of marriage, I am more in love with him now than I was at the beginning. I did not know that was possible. I am not complaining. Story 10. Every morning we ask whether we slept well. We also share any wacky or unusual dreams. Story 11. After years of marriage, you will learn something new about your spouse and think, what on earth? Story 12. How many conversations do we have about whether the dog has pooped? Story 13. This is a lesson about aging and marriage. Time stretches in ways you do not anticipate. When I was younger, I sometimes had bad days, bad weeks, or even a bad month. Now that I have been in a relationship for 15 years and married for 10 years, I recognize that I have endured periods of a whole year or two that were rough, but we did not give up on each other. When I was younger, I thought that if my relationship struggled for a whole year, it would be a sign to leave. Looking back on times like the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, I realized those were a rough couple of years. But my husband and I made it, and we are stronger on the other side. Marriage and children make you play the long game. We went through a long roommates phase with no sexual intimacy and a lot of resentment. If we had not been married and had not had children, that might have been the time we separated. Things improved partly because circumstances changed and partly because, as life got easier, we found our way back to each other. It is a broader concept of time than you can grasp when you are young. The ups and downs can be long, and that is the point. You have someone who will be there for you even when the years get hard. Story 14. How dependent you become. No matter how separate your lives are and how independent you may feel, you bond emotionally in ways beyond imagination. I cannot fathom how I lived before him, and I have no clue if I will survive without him. I hope I never have to find out. Story 15. It is better to remain unmarried than to marry the wrong person. Story 16. Just because you love someone does not mean you should marry them. Story 17. No one seems to warn you how your life may change as you get older. As a spouse's dementia progresses, difficulties increase and rewards decrease. It shows how important long-term love and commitment are. My spouse is still my love and my best friend. Each month I take on more responsibilities. Driving, paying bills and managing finances, indoor and outdoor chores and scheduling appointments. I also work to prevent situations from getting worse. 2 years ago, I left TurboTax open and my spouse began entering random numbers and pressed send. Proud of helping. I had to immediately file a corrected tax return. Now I always remember to lock my computer. I check everything when they leave a room to make sure they did not leave the stove on, the refrigerator door open, the water running, or the house doors unlocked. I give them tasks I know they can succeed at. Rinsing blueberries, folding towels, singing to me, and feeding the cat. The saddest thing is that they understand things are changing and keep asking, sometimes jokingly, if I will leave them or if they will be alone. I reassure them of my love and that we are on this long journey together. Then I bring up a decades-old memory, and they usually remember the happy times. You have to look for the little joys in life and focus on those. Story 18. Blending family traditions is hard. Even when you settle into a tradition that is right and good for your family, the nostalgia or trauma from your family of origin can be almost instinctual. It can be something as small as who places the tree topper or as large as where you travel for the holidays. Story 19. That, what do you want to eat? Becomes a full contact sport. Story 20. How devastating it can be when they are no longer the person you married because of mental illness. It is like they have died, but they are physically still there. Story 21. If you have issues and want the relationship to work, resolve them between the two of you or agree to work with an unbiased, licensed professional. Complaining to others only leads to disaster and pain. Story 22. Getting divorced requires much more paperwork than getting married, even when there are no children or assets. Story 23. How wonderful it can be. I was only ever told how hard it is, how much it sucks, how much you have to compromise, how it gets boring, and so on. None of that has been true for us. We are two peas in a pod, just different enough that we do not get bored or drive each other crazy. We genuinely have such a good time together and love each other. Oh yes, and the sex is so good. It gets better as time passes. I was told it would be the opposite, mostly by a woman who does not enjoy sex in general. Story 24. If it goes wrong, it can wreck your life. Story 25. How amazing it can be when you have a partner who actually steps up and takes care of everything while you are in bed sick for 3.5 months. Story 26. Occasionally having big fights and actually working them through until you find common ground is a very important part of maintaining a healthy relationship. I do not have a good example from my own family, and I am thankful that my wife does not let me disengage. I find that kind of conflict very hard, but when the fight is over, we both feel more connected and try to learn how to do better. Story 27. You need to remain loyal to yourself. Keep your own interests, hobbies, and friends. Do not be absorbed by your spouse's interests, hobbies, friends, or work life. Over time, you may be identified only as someone's wife instead of as yourself. Always put yourself first when it comes to your health, interests, and life goals. You can collaborate with your spouse, but never allow yourself to be absorbed by them. Story 28. One day when you feel low, you will receive cuddles, hugs, coffee in bed, and your favorite books to read while the rest of the work is taken care of. Story 29. The whole in sickness part can be a real thing. I was a caregiver for 10 years of our 16-year marriage. Story 30. Honestly, what shocked me most after 7 years with my partner was discovering that issues can be solved, even if they are years old or have been there from the beginning. It is possible to keep getting to know each other after all this time and to feel like we have barely started. I never expected our relationship to be so much better now than it was in the new relationship. Energy phase. I think mainstream thought now is to quit when it gets hard, since the options are endless and marriage is supposed to become boring or apathetic after a while. But all it takes is wanting to be together, really wanting it and not just being scared of breaking up, a willingness to work together and a lot of self-reflection, and it can be wonderful and fulfilling. Story 31. Sometimes your spouse will love you so sweetly and without any fanfare that you start crying during sex just thinking about how wonderful they are. Story 32. The longer you are married, the more marriage becomes love. The ease of knowing someone so well and yelling "what" from different rooms of the house because neither of you can hear anything anymore. Story 33. Long term, the things that end up matching are your core values, styles of communication, everyday emotional needs, and ability to let things go. You may be with someone initially because of shared interests, social circles, parallel careers, or common goals, but those things will not carry your marriage through adversity or tedium. You can make any number of friends to share your hobbies or talk about your interests, but even if your spouse has no interest in what you are into, your spouse can be the rock on which you build your life or the force that breaks it. It is all superficial compared to what you believe is important, how you express and receive affection, and how you talk to one another about important matters. More than anything, you need to learn not to hold on to resentment. Otherwise, you will find reasons every day to hate the person who shares your life. You either spend all your time collecting grievances, or you put your love for your spouse first and see the gripes as the minor inconveniences they are. Story 34. This may sound negative, but I felt it was important to share. It is not a Disney fairy tale. You do not just meet the one and expect everything to be perfect from then on. You may have different views on parenting, and you often discover those differences after you have children. Resentment grows when it remains unresolved. The toughest and most unpleasant moments reveal who someone truly is. When trust is lost, it can be over. Losing trust is not only about infidelity. For example, exposing intimate details to shame you, lying about financial matters, denying substance use even when you have proof, or sharing your goals and personal matters with others can force you to hide your thoughts, goals, and ambitions. If you find yourself in any of these or similar situations, know that you can leave and you are not a failure. Talk to family or someone you trust. If you are alone, seek a therapist or counselor, including online options. Story 35. There is a chance that no matter how hard you try or how much you want it, the marriage might not work out. You have to move on and keep living. Story 36. How fun it is, and how much I miss them when they are away. Story 37. You choose to love each other. It is an active choice. Story 38. If you have never been married, you may not know how to do it. Everyone says marriage is work, but it can be work that you and your partner do not yet know how to do. Taking care of your partner is a skill you may need to develop. Marriage counseling does not always mean your marriage has failed. It can mean you are both willing to learn how to make it work. Story 39. No matter how honest you are, how willing you are to work through things, how well you communicate, or how happy you thought you were, they can still cheat and the marriage can still end. Story 40. The part about until death may come much sooner than you think. Story 41. You can love someone more than you ever thought possible. They make you better and change your life every day. When you look at them, you see small smile lines forming, and there is a little more gray in their beard and hair, and you love them all the more for it. No one warns you that your heart will still squeeze when they look at you a certain way, or that slow mornings and breezy nights will feel so perfect and fulfilling. No one warned you how perfect it really can be. Story 42. The hard work that everyone talks about is facing yourself repeatedly in the mirror of another person. Story 43. Marriage is mostly just learning to tolerate each other's weird Spotify playlists. Story 44. How much extra work is it for the primary caregiver? Story 45. I feel sadness and loneliness, missing the closeness after many years. Story 46. I can absolutely despise my husband during a bad argument and fall in love all over again while we figure it out. Story 47. The minute you get married, your husband can no longer find the ketchup bottle. Story 48. People change over time and it's okay to fall out of love. Story 49. It is about moments, not being available around the clock. It is about appreciating the little things. Story 50. Using words like please and thank you, and complimenting the home by saying the house looks great, really goes a long way toward a peaceful relationship. Story 51. A spouse may say something stupid as a joke. If you do not take it as a joke, it can lead to a fight. Impact and intent are different. You can have no malicious intent yet still cause a negative impact. Respect requests for space. If your spouse asks you to walk away to calm down, go to a different room and do not follow them. Partners may pass gas near you even if they have not earlier. It can smell and be unpleasant. This often happens when people feel comfortable. Even if they have already eaten, they may get upset if you do not call to ask if they want anything. Just call and ask. Story 52. You will both change a lot over time, and not always for the better. Some issues you or your partner have may be described as red flags that people say doom marriages or make them toxic. But if you both keep choosing to commit and grow together, it will be okay. Story 53. Politeness is more important in a marriage than in any other relationship. Story 54. How many times have I had to change my mind because the decisions I used to make on my own are now wrong? Story 55. Being in a marriage means witnessing the many changes your partner goes through over the years, while your partner witnesses the changes you go through. It's not about projection or perfection. It's about respect. Story 56. How much you will hear about your husband's bowel movements. But that is a good thing. A man's bowel movements are his sacred time, And if he feels he can share this with you and you with him, and you both still want to have sex, you are fine. Story 57. It is mostly about negotiating over the thermostat and what is for dinner. Story 58. Do not marry a man whose mother depends on him for everything. She can undermine your mental health while acting like a victim, and he may excuse her behavior. Even if you love your husband deeply, if his mother feels threatened, you may have to choose between the relationship and your well-being. Story 59. They say people do not change, but I am here to tell you that people do change. Story 60. It does not mean anything. A relationship takes work until the end of either of you. You can never run from your previous life or trauma. If you have not dealt with past trauma, it will likely affect your relationship and surface as problems. Story 61. You can be in love for over 15 years and come home from work one day to hear him say, "I am done," and then be abandoned. No matter how much you think you love or how secure you feel in the relationship, the rug can be pulled out from under you at any minute. Being married adds legal pain to the emotional pain. Yes, I am bitter. Story 62. Sometimes you are the problem. We all have toxic traits we should heal instead of expecting others to love or accept the flaws in us that hurt them. Story 63. I didn't change my last name after getting married, and I was surprised by how often people question me about it. Story 64. Never leave things unsaid, whether it is bad or good. If you ever have the misfortune of losing someone suddenly, you cannot have those conversations and they will become soul-destroying. Story 65. Culture matters a lot in mixed marriages between people from different countries. Story 66. Each of you will do little things that drive the other nuts. You will learn to live with those things, though. Story 67. It is still important to be yourself. Make time to do things you enjoy, and keep hobbies and interests that are your own. Many things change, but do not lose who you are as an individual in the process of becoming part of a couple. Story 68. It genuinely isn't worth it. It's a financial contract and nothing more. Story 69. Suddenly, the women who had turned you down, thought you were out of their league, or were outright mean when you asked them out begin coming out of the woodwork. They claim they would have dated you, say they missed their chance, and in some cases actively try to get you to cheat on your new wife. A wedding ring is a woman's seal of approval, and nothing upsets a woman more than discovering she cannot have something another woman has. Story 70. People change. Every decade, you or they can become a different person with new experiences and greater maturity. They will not always be the immature jerk from your 20s, especially if you both grow together. Story 71. My husband used my new toothbrush yesterday because he thought it was his. Story 72. You can have a nice life with a dual-income household, or be single, renting, and barely getting by. You may see your children only half the time if you are lucky. If you get half-time custody, it can cost a fortune in legal fees. Marriage can be wonderful, or it can leave you close to poverty. Story 73. For better or worse. You will not be connected to anyone in this way except your spouse. You cannot imagine what that means until it is reality. They can not only become the worst version of themselves, they can become so ill that you have to change everything about your life to accommodate their needs. You hope they try to be the best version of themselves so that caring for them is less burdensome. Story 74. How frustrating it is not to be on the same page about small things. We have the big things sorted perfectly, but small matters like how dishes should be washed or when appointments should be scheduled are really annoying. Compromising on these matters seems infinitely harder because the big issues have logic, research, and morality that you can work through. The small matters are opinion-based, so feelings tend to be more involved and logic can go out the window. In the end, the dishes will be done by whoever is doing them. They will get clean. It does not need to be done my way. My current focus is learning to let go of things that will not matter tomorrow to help maintain our marriage. Story 75. You have to make a conscious decision to choose them every day. The bond of marriage is often not enough. You may think that your love is enough, but it is not. Story 76. How much someone can anger you so badly that you want to commit murder, yet still love them. Story 77. Some people respond with how wonderful it can be. Obviously that is very nice for you, But why would you need to be warned about that, as the original poster asked? Story 78. Even if your name is not on the card, you are partly responsible for everything charged to it. Be transparent or do not marry that person. If someone has abusive traits, those traits are likely to worsen after marriage. Actions are far more important than words. Marriage is a legal and financial contract. Be careful who you marry, and be prepared to pay the cost if you must end that contract. People can become significantly worse during divorce. Story 79. Some people do not mean in sickness and in health. Also, do not marry a lesbian if you are a straight man. Story 80. Over many years, you and your partner's mental health will fluctuate. It can be difficult and sometimes feel impossible during a mental health downturn. But it is a long game. If you love each other, are committed to going through the good and the bad, and work on problems as a team, you will get through it. People change and evolve over time. Make sure you are moving in the same general direction. Story 81. The wrong person can ruin your life, sometimes forever, because you are legally entangled. Story 82. You simply cannot be as carefree as you were before marriage. On the other hand, a kind and patient partner is an incomparable blessing. Story 83. Marrying while expecting your partner to change after the wedding sets you up for failure. If you believe you can convince your spouse that they will want children after marriage, that your relationship should take priority over their relationships with friends or immediate family, or that they will fundamentally change a core aspect of their personality, do not marry. What you see is what you get. Some people might change, but do not marry hoping for that small chance. Everyone I know who got divorced saw the red flags but chose to ignore them, thinking they could change their partner. Do not let this be you. Story 84. Never say my husband or my wife would never, because it is impossible to know for sure. Also, you must be willing to get hurt, because love with walls is a guaranteed failure. Story 85. When you are 40 years in and are expected to care for your stroke-affected spouse, it is a killer. Story 86. You cannot change the other person, no matter how small the change seems. They will not change, and it is not fair to try. Love them as they are or do not get married. Story 87. You will most likely develop some communication code that only the two of you understand. This can begin during the dating stage, but in marriage it is almost necessary. You will also develop habits based on living together. It is good if these habits nurture the relationship. It is also important to communicate how to deal with anger, fear, sadness, and arguments. Story 88. Not married, but something I have observed. If you are married, do not badmouth your partner to friends or family, no matter how bad they are. If you love your partner and have no intention of leaving, there is no point in making your friends and family hate them. You only end up looking like someone with zero credibility. Story 89. Do not expect sex all the time, especially if you have children. I thought marriage would mean sex whenever I wanted, but different work shifts and multiple children have made it much less frequent than I expected. Story 90. Your partner can make or break you in every area of life. Financially, spiritually, and in terms of confidence. If your partner is lazy with you, they will be lazy with your children as well. Story 91. You will lose the other at some point, and it's going to hurt badly. Story 92. How often do unhappy people or couples try to convince me that I will not always be happy in my relationship? Story 93. I would have to sleep in the same room and bed with someone forever. I do not like that. Story 94. If your spouse racks up a lot of credit card debt without your knowledge, you could potentially be on the hook for it. Story 95. 80% of communication consists of shouting the word "what" across multiple rooms. Story 96. They don't make a handbook for navigating communication. You have to make it up as you go through trial by fire. Story 97. It is a test of patience, humility, and compromise, more than a measure of love. Story 98. I don't understand the comments about snoring. Am I just different? When my partner snores loudly, I find it extremely cute, and it gives me a warm, fuzzy, peaceful happiness. Is anyone else like me? Story 99. Good health is often taken for granted. Love your partner for who they are in every moment, not only in the best of times because everything can change in an instant. Story 100. Learning to compromise and putting yourself in the other person's shoes will make your relationship much healthier. This comes from someone who does not argue with their partner very often. When they do, they communicate as best they can. It is not about being right or wrong. It is about letting go of anger or sadness and resolving the issue amicably. Story 101. It is the little things that bother you which destroy relationships. Talk about those issues and resolve them. Story 102. It is inexpensive to get into but expensive to get out of. Story 103. Know that you will both change as people and not always in compatible ways. When that happens and you notice it, you either make it work or you do not. Story 104. The other person could very well decide they want out and you have to be okay with that. Story 105. If you discount the wedding, the actual cost to get married pales in comparison to getting divorced. Story 106. If you have a good foundation before marriage, your life does not really change that much when you are married. Story 107. It probably is not the best choice for 90% of people. Story 108. No one tells you how much compromise is involved. It's like a never-ending negotiation. Story 109. It didn't convince her to stop being jealous if I talked to another woman. Story 110. I believe people can change and grow together for the better. We have had some big fights that felt like the end, but both of us pushed through until we reached the root of the disagreement. After cooling off, we come together quietly and reaffirm our love for each other. In the end, most disagreements come from the same basic worries or fears. We are then able to understand each other on a deeper level and sometimes lean into each other's views and adapt. Story 111. Almost all good marriages end with someone dying. You have to learn how to be a whole new person afterward. Story 112. It is not all about you. Conflict will happen. They can be right and you can be wrong. Respect your in-laws and tolerate their hobbies, even if that hobby is religion. Story 113. Growing with your partner along the same path at the same time is difficult, and it can be even harder when you are no longer together. Even before the recent political and religious conflicts, my husband's views and beliefs changed after we married. He became more religious and more politically engaged, and his path moved away from my beliefs. The sad thing is that my education and experience had inspired him. I completed my religious exploration when I was younger. I have degrees in political science and public justice and worked as a lobbyist in Washington, District of Columbia. I even testified before a United States House of Representatives subcommittee. We entered our marriage aware of each other's beliefs, but because I knew more facts, he wanted to keep up. The problem was that his research relied on very biased sources, which led to very different wants and desires. It is not just the big issues. It can be small things like adopting new extracurricular activities, preferring different genres of television shows, or starting a health routine. You do not both have to do everything the same, but if you are too different, life becomes inconvenient at best. Story 114. When you remove the religious aspects, marriage is a signed document that links your credit and accounts. My partner and I are not religious and do not believe in God. When we considered marriage, we found there were fewer benefits. I had not realized marriage was rooted in religious and stereotypical ideas until I met her. We decided not to marry and discovered we save more money because health insurance and student loans are not split between our incomes. Story 115. Being married is a full-time responsibility every day of the year. Story 116. Things change, and constant companionship can become one of the loneliest experiences in the world. Story 117. Being a good financial fit is as important as being a good emotional fit. Story 118. Waking up every morning to someone you hate and having your day instantly ruined. Story 119. You do not need to verbalize every thought you have. In fact, keeping your pie hole shut is often the better option. Story 120. Place the wife's clothes on wooden hangers and the husband's on wire hangers. Story 121. The honeymoon period isn't always idyllic for everyone. Many couples spend the following year arguing. I did too. Even if you dated for a while beforehand, marriage feels different. The weight of the decision and the permanence of it really weigh on you. Every time they sneeze, you think, oh my God, are they going to sneeze like that for the rest of our lives? Story 122. You need to consider who his family is. Do not ignore it. It matters. Story 123. It was actually way easier than everyone made it out to be, at least in my case. Growing up with comics that joked about hating your spouse and then hearing the same people give marriage advice when I got engaged, I expected a difficult slog. 17 years later, I am still so in love with my husband. Marriage has not been hard overall. There have been difficult moments, but it is the best and easiest thing I have ever done. We love and respect each other. We are both as independent as we want to be, and probably the biggest reason is that we do not have children. If you are pushed into a life you did not want because you were told it was what you should do, of course you will be miserable. Story 124. I have been married twice and am now in a good relationship. Even after 2 failed marriages, one that lasted 20 years and one that lasted 4 years, I am still very fond of the idea. Publicly committing to each other and sharing both boring and fun times as a team appeals to me. It is not about getting half because that is not how it works here in Australia. Lawyers look at what each person brought into the relationship, who contributed what, and weigh it all in a separation. I just think marriage is nice. Story 125. It is all too easy to use your spouse as an excuse, and that is obviously wrong. Story 126. Your spouse is always in your space. The bathroom, the kitchen, the bedroom, the living room. It is annoying. Story 127. While you are a team, you are still individuals. You will not always agree or want the same things. It is great to do things together, but cherish the individual times that let you pursue what you love. I appreciate my husband because he lets me do the things I love, even though he is not a fan of camping. He also appreciates that I give him space to do what he loves, such as gaming. We also spend a lot of time enjoying things together, such as walking, trying new foods, and watching shows. Story 128. How fragile and uncertain it is. You see, marriages you thought were doomed from the start work out, and people you thought were meant to be together can split after a few years, and you realize how much luck is involved in finding a partner who not only wants the same things as you but who will also change with you in sufficiently similar ways to still want similar things in the future. No amount of working on a relationship or tactically choosing a partner can account for this. You are perpetually grateful that it is working and petrified that it will change. I do not know. Maybe that is just life. Story 129. Your spouse is always nearby, somehow standing in the way of where you need to go. Story 130. One of you will take the blanket at night, so the best move is to attack. Story 131. Becoming a parent can change your whole personality in a few months. Story 132. They come back to your house every day. Story 133. There will be good days, bad days, and plain old days when nothing much happens. Story 134. We often argued or fought because of hurt feelings. Almost all of our fights were for this reason. We did not say something, we said something hurtful, a look caused pain, a comparison was made or implied, or you did not acknowledge my feelings. Story 135. You and your spouse cannot have a flexible spending account and a health savings account at the same time. You must change your health insurance enrollment immediately to avoid a penalty. I found this out too late. Story 136. The toilet paper and Kleenex budget had to be increased tenfold. Story 137. Some people do not mean their vows when they say them. Story 138. Marriage is like a roller coaster, but you cannot get off mid-ride. Story 139. How good it is for your mental health to share life with your best friend. Having someone you can go to first when you need help or support makes a big difference. Waking up next to your best friend every day is wonderful. Building a routine is much better when you start and end the day with someone you love. Story 140. My wife was the messy roommate in college, so I become very anxious when our house is filthy. Story 141. Everything feels so much more intense. I can emotionally disconnect from fights with friends, coworkers, or my biological family. But if I have a fight with my wife, it genuinely feels like the end of the world. even though we communicate quite effectively and work through our problems. I'm just more emotionally invested in this family I've created than in any previous relationship. Story 142. It is only really difficult when you have the wrong partner. Story 143. Marriage is easy and a lot of fun when you choose the right partner. Story 144. It is easy to marry someone, but very hard to deal with their hidden personalities later. No matter how much effort you put in, you may still fall short and sit alone, shedding a tear or two. Story 145. It's okay to divorce or call it quits. It doesn't mean you failed or you're giving up. Of course, you should try to make things work and use this as a last resort, but things happen. Sometimes people change. Sometimes you realize you married who you hoped they would be instead of who they were. Sometimes people grow apart, and sometimes trauma drives people apart. You should not expect your relationship to last if you do not put effort into it. If you're not romancing your partner or putting effort in, your relationship will fall apart and the love between you will fade. Go on dates, bring home small gifts, flirt with your partner, and so on. Put in effort and do it often. Love is a choice, and you need to choose your partner every day. Communication is key. Be blunt and direct. If your partner upsets you, tell them. If you need something or want something, for goodness sake, just say, I need or I want, and state it. Do not go around the bush. Stop being passive-aggressive. Be direct and blunt, but work to stay kind. After all, you love them, so speak to them like it. Pro tip based on the previous point. Verbalize things to help you both keep them in mind. My fiancé and I have been mid-argument when either of us pauses and says, I know we are both upset. We are not accomplishing anything. Can we both take a breath and remind ourselves we are a team and need to stop acting like we are against each other? It's us against the issue, not you versus me. We then take a breath and try again, and we have not had an issue we did not solve when we did this. This should not need to be said, but if you're screaming or fighting, you are in a verbally abusive relationship and you are acting toxic. Your relationship is not healthy or normal. No one should scream at you, call you names, or curse at you. There is no reason for any of these to ever be an issue. If you do this to someone, you should get therapy. You're abusive. This is not normal, nor is it love or kindness. No excuses. You should prioritize your partner. Family and friends should not take priority over your spouse. Story 146. Women cease to be seen as individuals once they marry. They become Mr. Smith's wife, Jane's mother, or Stephen's mother. Whatever remarkable person they once were is no longer recognized and will be forgotten. Story 147. I am in a common law relationship, but I will answer anyway. It is so much fun. I thought we would have run out of things to talk about by now, but that has not happened yet. I have always needed some measure of alone time, except apparently not from my partner. He is the best. Story 148. You might not realize you are in an abusive relationship. Story 149. People kept saying everything would change once you got married. I am happy to report that is not true. My husband and I had lived together for over a decade before we got married, and the only thing that changed is how we do our taxes. Story 150. The sheer amount of sex is constant. It never stops. I'm having it right now even as I type. There you go, BuzzFeed artificial intelligence writer. Story 151. It might make some straight people of your own gender upset with you. Story 152. Men are not natural leaders. Even the best-intentioned men require constant direction and management. Story 153. It's spending your whole life deciding what to eat for dinner. Story 154. The complexity and bureaucracy of divorce in Germany and how much you can lose. Story 155. In the United States, sometimes you have to do it to get health insurance, not because you love the person. Story 156. In a couple of decades, you might look back and be amazed at how two lives intertwined like tree trunks, growing together with shared experiences and many good memories. Maybe children are in the mix too, like smaller branches on your beautiful, leafy tree. Story 157. If you marry a friend, I think it is infinitely easier to get through any rough patches. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.